that, we have another breaking news coming in from U.S. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is scheduled to hold a call with leaders of the Group of Seven today to discuss the rapidly evolving situation in Iran, according to a U.S. State Department official. The call, involving the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, aims to coordinate diplomatic and strategic responses amid the escalating conflict following recent U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iranian targets. Now we welcome back Mr. Collins Chong-Yu-Keith. He's a foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins, for staying with us. Now, how do you think that these other countries like G7 countries and countries in Europe, countries in Asia, will need to react to this? Do you think they should be concerned that the spillover will affect them, their oil prices? Maybe they're even the tourists or they're people who are stuck in these locations right now.
Definitely, we will see, these kind of responses, condemnations also on multiple fronts, and of course, primarily will be on the immediate economic impact in terms of turbulence on the market, in terms of energy prices, especially with oil, as well as also, of course, it will upend the situation in West Asia and Middle East, and of course, the eventual ripple effects will be felt throughout the world. It's at the epicenter of global trade. And definitely this is the main concern of all these states. But secondary to that will be, of course, the security and safety of their people in the region, especially in the states that have been hit by the retaliations, of course, in the Gulf states, and of course, Dubai being seen as the main hub for global transport, for global air transport. And of course, concerns have been raised by all nations onto the safety and security of their people, and this is expected. But largely to that equation will be how this response system by the countries, especially those who are trying to side with this platform of the global south or BRICS, or trying to defend the sanctity of the rules-based order or the legitimacy of the international law with regards to the strikes by the U.S. forces. And of course, as I've stated, it remains to be seen how credible or how effective this cause will be. And in terms of course, the possible retaliations by other powers on the U.S., and whether this will have a large impact or influence on President Trump or his administration in weighing in on further options on Iran. And of course, these are all expected. But as I've stated, the situation so far has been largely still being in calibration by both sides. And the immediate impact will be felt only days later. But as of now, the important part will be to ensure that it does not spiral into uncontrolled escalation that will see that both sides will be trapped in this in a full war theater. And for now, it's not yet. We have not seen the volume of death of being in a state of an all-out war. And of course, and whether other regional states, whether in the Gulf states or the wider region, will be then compelled to join in the fray and to whether to support one side or the other. But I don't see there's any compelling push for both Russia and China to join the conflict. We will see that in the near future as well. And our hope is to ensure that whatever semblance of hope that still remains in terms of de-escalation, both sides will have to take that route, and to ensure that it's still within this control environment and does not escalate into further an all-out war theater for all parties.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins Chong-Yu-Keith, for highlighting that. We have another breaking news coming in. The United Nations Nuclear Agency, the International Atomic Energy Agency, will hold an extraordinary meeting on Monday to discuss the aftermath of the recent U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran. The meeting, convened at Russia's request, will focus on the military actions taken against Iran, particularly in relation to the country's nuclear program. In a statement released late on Saturday, the IAEA has confirmed that a special session of its Board of Governors would take place to address the implications of these strikes on global security and nuclear non-proliferation. Now we welcome back Mr. Collins Chong-Yu-Keith. Thank you very much, Mr. Keith, for staying with us. Now, looking at this situation, how do you analyze how will the relationship of China and Russia with U.S. in terms of their relationship with Iran will be unfolding in the coming weeks?
Well, I don't see this, new theater in West Asia, in Iran, would have any particular, deep impact on the current ties among the three powers. Of course, this will give a huge blow, especially to Beijing, in terms of its own energy security, having been dealt with a deep blow also by what has happened in Venezuela last month. And of course, Iran and Venezuela have been the core oil suppliers to China. Of course, Iran has been also a core weapon supplier to Russia in terms of the conflict in Ukraine. And definitely both have raised concerns as to the impact of this fallout to both of them, especially in regards to their munitions, their weapons stockpile, and their capacity to sustain their interests in whether in Ukraine or whether to, of course, also feel the interest of China in terms of energy security. But of course, and they will still resort to the conventional diplomatic means to condemn the actions of President Trump's actions. And but they will still continue their own current maneuvers, whether in Ukraine or for China in East Asia. Taiwan still remains the ultimate red line. But of course, there's a silver lining also for Beijing in terms of how the US is now being distracted yet again by another theater of conflict in West Asia, in the Middle East, apart from Ukraine. And maybe there's new leverage or capacity for China now to move, maybe now to gauge the opening and to seize upon this opening, to have greater clamping down of, its rights in South China Sea or over Taiwan, and seeing how the US is once again being distracted. But we have seen how the conflict in Iran now is largely confined to the usage of air power. So the projection of power through the air forces of the US, and of course they are now the main tools being used. But as I've stated, Iran is a big country in size, and the missile bases, the air defense bases, and of course the nuclear bunkers and all that are all hard to penetrate. And it will require not only days of initial strikes, but it will risk becoming a protracted conflict yet again. But as I've stated, President Trump is not a fan of a long-term protracted conflict that will have no positive returns to the US, and you should also give a damning image to him personally, being a man of strength, a symbol of audacity and boldness. And that's why, as I've stated, the first couple of days now is of critical importance and is of critical timeline to the US in terms of proclaiming victory and to ensure that objectives are met. But this is also a critical timeline for de-escalation measures as well. And if you pass this threshold, then there'll be further risks ahead. But for President Trump's team, they have thought that this is now the timeline to act after decades of inaction by President Trump's predecessors. And after decades of status quo and this strategic patience, and now for President Trump, I think he thinks that this is the best timeline. And if this is not done now, there's no way to check the future capacity and power of the Iranian missile system or even the Iranian potential nuclear weapon system. And for whatever it is, for President Trump, it is a high risk, high reward system, but it's still very volatile now. We will not see whether this will be successful or otherwise for him. But the impact will be reverberating throughout the world. But for now, hopes are still there for de-escalation measures, and we hope that it will turn out that way.
Right. Building on that, Mr. Collins, how would that de-escalation look like? As you highlighted the cruciality, the vital timeline that we are in right now, right? So since these negotiations that were unfolding, it seems like maybe it wasn't genuine, maybe it was. What's your take on that? And do you think that also the negotiations and then these epic fury. This has disrupted all this now, ending in the situation in the Middle East now. So do you think this has disrupted the trust that Middle East had towards US, thinking that they can be hopeful by joining the Port of Peace, by joining US alliances? They were hopeful, but do you think how that trust is disrupted, and how long would it take for these countries to gain or to trust US again?
Well, I don't think they will have much of a choice, and we have seen how most of the major Gulf states, of course Qatar, Bahrain, and UAE, are all mainly dependent on the US for the ultimate security umbrella. Even the case of Saudi Arabia, and almost all of them have stated that they are not in agreement with any kind of moves over Iran. But now that it has happened, of course they are now being in a strategic dilemma as to how we move forward, because they have also been being hit by the measures of retaliations by Iran. Of course, also we have seen how this will prove to be a difficult situation for them. But down the road, they have no choice but to continue to ensure that they still be the host and to host the bases for U.S. forces. And of course, they will be seeing with great concern as to how the situation in Iran will turn up, in terms of post-conflict management, and to avoid this Iraq 2.0 altogether, in terms of how this messy regime change objective is going to turn out. Because we have seen in the case of Libya, in the case of Iraq, and maybe in the case of Venezuela as well, and Iran is a different ballgame, as I've stated. And of course also this the proxies, and what will happen, whether they will be emboldened and they'll use this attack on Iran as a pretext to further their activities in the region. And this will also prove to be a real threat to these Gulf states, as well as these Middle Eastern powers, and to how much the extent of the support system by President Trump in terms of managing this post-conflict volatility in this regard. So all these factors will need to be considered. But as I've stated, so far the tools being used are mainly constrained to the use of projection of air power. We won't see any kind of boost on the ground anytime soon, especially by President Trump. And this is a completely different ball game as compared to Iraq. And how the shaping up of this post-conflict regime shake-up will determine the future of the region in terms of stability for years to come. But this is a game changer in terms of how, after decades, after almost 50 years of status quo, and how this will affect the region remains to be seen. But also in terms of de-escalation, both sides will need to have this correct messaging and narrative in terms of retaliations, in terms of a much more calibrated response system. And this will depend on how how the Iranian regime will respond or to retaliate in terms of U.S. casualties, in terms of the damage to other U.S. allies in the region, and how President Trump will see that, and whether this will invite greater fury or anger from President Trump. It remains to be seen. So as I stated, this is of great importance, for both sides not to miscalculate or not to show ultimate deterrent efforts through this spiral of security dilemma, and to ensure that the projection of force are being used to deter conflicts. But up to this threshold, you will no longer be useful or credible, and it will be a futile effort. And then we'll see this dangerous cycle of escalations downward, and this is what we want to avoid also from now on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins Chong-Kyu Keith, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we have another breaking news coming in from Dubai. The situation at Dubai International Airport has turned